The interesting thing about dental, you can buy a lot of practices for 5 times EBITDA. And when you roll the practices in and integrate them, and we do use Denticon, we'll get all the new practices on Denticon and get them integrated in, that practice instantaneously becomes worth twice what we pay for it.
Hey there, dental economist. If you're a dentist owner or a leader within a dental business thinking about growing production, case acceptance, patient and staff satisfaction, positive outcomes, and everything else that comes with running a dental business, then you're a dental economist, and you've come to the right place. Welcome to the Dental Economist Show. We're meeting at the intersection of profit and purpose as I sit down with dental leaders who share their stories about dentistry, business, and growth. Welcome back to the Dental Economist Show with me, Mike Huffaker. Today, we have the pleasure of welcoming Matt Ornstein, co-founder and owner of Dental Pitch Brokerage and owner of Oak Dental Partners. Matt's extensive background spans from real estate investment and development to becoming a leading figure in dental practice management and investment. With Oak Dental Partners managing around 70 dental offices across the U.S., Matt has a unique perspective on the intersection of financial metrics, operational efficiency, and growth in the dental industry. Recently, Matt wrote and published the Dental EBITDA Handbook, which is available now on Amazon. Welcome to the show, Matt. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Mike. I appreciate you having me.
It's really great to meet you at Dykema. I know we were both headed down to the pool, walking out to the cabana, and you heard me say a cabana number, and you're like, oh, I know where you're going. Hey, I'm Matt. Nice to meet you. And I was like, oh, what a friendly, nice guy. And I don't run into that all that often, all the time. So kind of took notice and then learned more about your background and just thought you'd be really awesome to have on the show. And so, to start, you've had a really diverse and impressive career. You've transitioned from real estate investment to becoming now a significant player in the dental industry. You mind sharing just a little bit about your professional journey and kind of what brought you into dental management and investment?
Started my career in real estate development, did multifamily, which is apartments, townhouses, condos, New York style lofts, and then got into a lot of land entitlement where we would buy large tracts of land, get it zoned for single family uses or multifamily uses or mixed uses, which would be commercial, retail, residential. And I'm still in that business. I own a home building company based out of Atlanta, Georgia. I own an industrial warehouse development company based out of Atlanta, Georgia. We're doing a roll-up of car washes, the automated kind that you put your car in neutral and goes through a tunnel and you vacuum the cars yourselves. We still do a lot of land entitlement. And a few years back, a little over 3 years ago, we bought a smaller DSO with 20 offices and $7 million in EBITDA. And it just seemed like a really compelling business at the time, very stable economically through good times and challenging times. And the thing that intrigued me about the dental business, aside from it being what I'm going to call fairly and mostly recession-proof, is that the higher the profitability of a DSO, dental support organization, the higher the multiple on EBITDA that you can get when you sell. So I'm going to use some easy numbers. Once your EBITDA in a DSO gets above, let's say, $10 million a year, you have a very, very high likelihood of being able to sell that practice for 10 times the company's EBITDA, which is earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. The interesting thing about dental, you can buy a lot of practices for 5 times EBITDA. And when you roll the practices in and integrate them, and we do use Denticon, we'll get all the new practices on Denticon and get them integrated in, the practice instantaneously becomes worth twice what we pay for it. So if we bought a dental practice that had $1 million of EBITDA and we paid 5 times EBITDA, so $5 million for that practice, as soon as it becomes part of our group, we can sell our group for, I'm using a number, we'll probably get more than that, but 10 times EBITDA. So if we paid $5 million for that dental practice, as soon as it's rolled into Oak Dental Partners, it's now worth $10 million. It's called arbitrage. That's the thing that really intrigued me about the dental space. And also knowing that 50% of the people in the United States have never been to a dentist, ever.
It is a crazy number, isn't it?
Yeah, so there's a lot of blue ocean out there to attract new patients and provide great patient care.
What first drew your attention to dental? Was it a relationship that you had? Had you met somebody that said, hey, you got to check this out? How did that come to pass?
Yeah, that's a great question. My business partner in the industrial warehouse development company plays golf with someone that had built a small dental group and sold it. And that gentleman was looking at Oak Dental Partners as a potential acquisition, wanting to maybe get back in the dental space. And I was introduced to this dentist, and the dentist explained the whole dental industry to me and how EBITDA worked in dentistry. That's why I got interested. So we took a look at that group. It was called Children and Teen Dental when I bought it because it was all pediatric. The gentleman that introduced us to that group decided that he did not want to get back into dentistry. After all, like playing golf and enjoying life. Yeah. Don't blame him. And then, so we ended up buying it.
And so what do you attribute the ability to drive maximum valuation in dental to? Obviously, you all believe in standardization of systems so that you can drive additional value from that perspective and help create standard operating procedures across all of the practices. But surely it has to be more than just, hey, I bought this, acquired this at 5x EBITDA, and we were able to stack and build multiple practices on top to create additional valuation. Is there more to it? Like, what are the other components that you think of when you're thinking about value creation within the organization?
I would say private equity, which typically is the financial backing behind DSOs, oftentimes is completely content to just buy at one multiple and aggregate and sell at another. I'll just use an easy example. If a group paid $25 million for multiple practices, buying them and stacking them on top of each other, bought them independently and paid $25 million at a 5x. Once all those practices are combined, you can sell the group for $50 million without any change in the EBITDA from any of the individual practices. So that alone is a very profitable business model. The upside to that is if you buy or an aggregate by buying and building, you bought $25 million of EBITDA, and then you can grow that EBITDA in the practices from 25 million to, let's just say, 40 million through organic growth. I'm just making some numbers up. Now you can sell a group for $80 million and you paid $25 million for it. So there are really two components: the arbitrage on the EBITDA multiple, buying at an EBITDA multiple that's lower than the EBITDA multiple of the group, and then growing EBITDA organically, meaning you're going to have to increase the revenues and collections at the individual practices and or reduce costs. Both of those are levers. You can reduce cost to increase EBITDA, or you can increase revenue and profits to increase EBITDA. Combination of both is best, but either one would suffice.
And that's where you see a lot of the focus these days on the same store growth. It's become really kind of the hot topic this year in every conference and every convention that takes place, is everyone wants to talk about same store growth. I think a large part of that, though, also ties into interest rates and groups being heavily levered. How does that part play into your plan? Like the debt component, the fact that interest rates are raised, it's creating some challenges for folks out in the market today. How do you think about it?
Interest rates have a massive impact in the DSO space and in the private equity world. When I bought Oak Dental Partners 3 years and probably 5 months ago, we were paying 7% interest on our debt, and now we're paying 12% interest. So it's gone up 67% on interest costs. And let me just, throw some numbers out there so people can understand that. If you have $100 million of debt and you're paying 7% interest, you owe the bank $7 million a year. So if you had 10 million of earnings or EBITDA before what you pay the bank in interest, 10 million of earnings minus 7 million of interest leaves you $3 million a year left over. That's called free cash flow.
Yep.
And you can use your free cash flow as equity when you're buying more dental offices. Or if you're opening de novo offices, you can use your free cash flow to expand. So now, same situation, companies making $10 million a year before interest payments, and interest rates have gone to 12%. If you have that $100 million of debt, now you owe 12 million in interest, but you're only making 10 million before you owe the bank. So you're negative $2 million a year. That's an example that there are many DSOs in that situation right now. A more realistic scenario would probably be the DSO is making $15 million a year before interest to the bank. So if you owe $7 million in interest, you still have $8 million of free cash flow, which you can reinvest in the business and grow the business without any change except interest rates going from 7 to 12%. If If you have 15 million in earnings, now you owe the bank 12 million in interest, and you only have $3 million left over to help grow the business. So interest rates play a huge part on your free cash flow. And if free cash flow is negative, you're out of business. So free cash flow is extremely important to monitor in the dental space. In my opinion, it's the most important financial metrics to keep track of, because you can be making $50 million a year, but if you owe the bank $51 million a year in interest, you're losing money and you're going to go out of business.
That was a very clear and articulate way of explaining that. I appreciate that. I don't think a lot of people, when they hear about the interest rates, really kind of tie it all together in that way to understand why it has the negative effect that it does. All of that money, you're talking either the 7 million or the 12 million on the debt service, like that's money that at a ZERP sort of world 5-7 years ago was all able to be reinvested because you didn't have the debt service payments to make, which was what I think in large part accelerated a lot of the growth that we saw. So now we live in this new world where, to your point, you either have to increase the revenues, decrease the costs, hopefully a combination of both in order to be successful. That leads me to the question, you just wrote this book and it's the Dental EBITDA Handbook that's available on Amazon. Why did you decide to do that? Why was that important to you as a project?
The reason I wrote it is because, to my great surprise, very, very few people know what EBITDA is. They might have heard it, but they don't really know what it is. And if they know what it stands for, earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization, they don't really understand how EBITDA affects the value of a dental practice or a dental group when it's time to sell the business. So I was looking on Amazon for books on EBITDA just to see what was out there. And they're like 250 pages, 300 pages. And let me tell you, that is a very boring subject matter. And I'm thinking
insomnia. Maybe that's a good cure for insomnia right there.
It's as good as Ambien, I'm sure. So I'm like, who has time to read 250 pages of the most dry, boring material? I'm a simplicity type of guy. So I said, let me see what I can do to simplify this topic and write it with very, very clear wording that anyone can understand. Someone in high school will be able to read this book and understand what EBITDA is and how it impacts the value of a dental practice or a dental group. So I was able to get all of that information in less than 20 pages, and I really could fit it in about 7 pages. I just increased the font size so it was easier to read, especially for people that wear glasses. And I was able to explain it all very clearly in a booklet that someone can read in like 7 to 10 minutes. And in the book also, I discussed the 2 levers that you can use to increase your EBITDA. That's decreasing costs or increasing revenue. They're the only 2 levers you can use.
So let me ask you this. Like if somebody says like, well, what's the difference between EBITDA and profit? What's your answer to that question?
I explain that in the booklet as well. So I'm going to use an example. You have $100 million in debt and you owe $10 million in interest to the bank every year. So your dental group, after all revenue minus all expenses, you have $11 million. And then you owe the bank $10 million in interest. Your net income is $1 million. That's the difference. You can have 11 million in EBITDA, which I call profit before bank payments. And your net income is your income after you pay the bank. That's the final expense that you have. If you have no debt, your EBITDA would be the same as your net income. If you have 11 million before bank payments, interest payments, your net income's 11 million. But if you owe the 10 million in interest, after you subtract the interest cost, which is a deduction, it's a cost, your net income is now $1 million. The interest on your bank debt really has a huge impact on your net income.
So now that you've entered into the world of dental, and in a pretty big way for a variety of reasons, including, its ability to be relatively recession proof and the fact that there's a lot of great investment opportunities in the space. I'd just be curious, like general observations of the industry as a whole. You've gotten to know a lot of the people in the space. You have a lot of relationships with different technology vendors, with different groups. You founded Dental Pitch Brokerage, which we can talk about a little bit more in just a minute. But you've been in real estate and you've kind of been immersed in that world for so long. How do you compare the two? And what are some of the things that you particularly enjoy about the dental space? And maybe some things that were a little bit surprising to you?
The biggest difference between the type of real estate I do and dentistry is the number of employees that you have to efficiently function with. So we have over 1,000 employees at Oak Dental Partners. On a industrial building, we have an operating partner and a construction manager, 2 people. That's it. We outsource everything. We outsource the design of the building, the engineering, and all of the construction to general contractor. So I don't have to manage any of those people, and a project gets done and those people are gone. Doesn't require an intensive personnel for the type of real estate I'm in, home building, industrial, or even car washes. At all of our car washes, we have 3 people on site at any given time: the manager, the assistant manager, and 1 employee. Those employees are generally fairly easy to replace. There's not a lot of training. You don't need high levels of education to work in one of those automated car washes. Very, very little skill and knowledge base is required. In a dental office, the dentists are highly educated, highly trained, and they're difficult to replace. One of the reasons that dentists are difficult to replace is right now, every year, 15,000 dentists are retiring every year, and only 6,000 are graduating from dental school. So there's a shortage of 9,000 dentists a year right now.
Oh, wow.
And if you look at someone coming out of dental school, they have very, very little clinical time, chair time. A lot of their practice is on, molds or cadavers. Very, very little experience in an actual live human mouth. The confidence and skill of kids coming out of dental school pales in comparison to a seasoned dentist that's been working with patients for 5 or more years. So what does that mean? Someone coming out of dental school probably can produce about 1/3 of the revenue that a seasoned dentist can deliver. There's a shortfall of 9,000 dentists a year. And of the 15,000 that are retiring, 6,000 to replace them per year coming right out of dental school with no experience and very little training, no fault of their own. Then your office manager really has to have a deep understanding of the systems and your practice management system and scheduling and patient interaction. And then you've got the hygienists, dental assistants. There's a lot of moving parts in a dental office. And every person in a dental office needs to be trained and build up a very significant and specific skill set and knowledge base. So that's been, it's a challenge for everyone. And currently, because of inflationary pressures, labor costs in the industry have gone up dramatically because for the reasons I just said. And as DSOs are growing and expanding, there's a lot of competition for hygienists, dental assistants, dentists, and office managers. The labor costs in the dental industry have gone up dramatically. The supply costs have gone up. Insurance has gone up. All the costs have gone up. And you're beholden as a dental office to insurance companies or Medicaid. And neither of those two have kept up with the costs that have been associated. So costs in a dental office might have gone up 20, 25% over the last few years. But what you're able to collect from the insurance companies or Medicaid may have gone up 5%. So you have to make up for that through operating efficiencies, really watching your costs on supplies, your lease costs in the offices, marketing. And then you really have to, where possible, take advantage of as many additional services that you can provide to the patients. So you might have been a general dentist office that was really just doing cleanings, fillings, fluoride treatment, some things like that. And now it really is critical that maybe you're doing orthodontics now, or you're doing extractions or sedation dentistry, veneers, crowns, dentures. Anyone who's successful right now in the dental space has to increase their revenue.
I mean, it's a very human capital intensive industry with a lot of challenges that you just laid out. I appreciate kind of the end of that statement with a little bit of illustration and some paths that can be taken to solve for it. Because at the beginning of the statement, it sounds very much like, well, this is an industry that is just rife with challenges. You have all of the human capital challenges. You have the dentist hiring challenges with the deficiency of who's retiring and who's coming out of school. The insurance, the costs are coming up, reimbursements are going down. And it's like, wait, you're getting squeezed from every angle. Like, where is the light at the end of the tunnel? So expanding services offered is one of them that you called out. How do you view technology in that landscape? Is that something that you feel could be a potential solution for some of these issues that are being faced right now in the dental space?
Technology adoption, in my opinion, is critical to financial success in the DSO and dental space right now. There's some great companies out there. One of them that I really love is Pearl AI, called Second Opinion. So when you take an X-ray in someone's mouth, Pearl will scan that X-ray against millions of other X-rays, come back and tell the dentist based off this x-ray, these are the issues that should be treated, have been treated by millions of other patients. And if you do handle these issues that are showing up on the x-ray, you will get paid by the insurance companies as well. And that's one of the big fears of dentists, that they're not 100% sure that something's ready to be treated, maybe having a cavity filled or an extraction or a root canal. And the dentist does that and submits it to the insurance company. There's always a fear that the dentist did all that work and spent the money on all that. And then the insurance company says, no, we're denying this because it wasn't necessary. And that's what I like about second opinion. The doctor makes the final decision, but at least has a reference point saying, based on this x-ray, these 4 things and treatments can be done right now. They're medically necessary. The time is right. And if you do these procedures, you're going to get paid by the insurance company. You're going to be able to collect the money on that. Another company that I really like is owned by a guy named Amal Nirgidkar. It's called Patient Prism, and it listens into all the phone calls. And if an appointment's not made or a treatment is not accepted by a patient for some reason, it all uses AI. It's basically all AI listening. It does a very short summary. It could be a 25-minute phone call. It might do a 1 or 2 sentence summary. It will alert the office manager, and the office manager has an opportunity to rectify that situation. And that can add a lot of additional revenue and opportunities for new patient acquisition. I'm going to give you one great example that Amal shared with me. Someone called in and spoke to someone at whoever's answering the phone. It happened to be someone at the office. And the gentleman said, he's in a lot of pain. He needs a root canal and a crown. Said, I'm in a lot of pain. I want to come in right away. And whoever was handling the phone call looked at the schedule and said, our next available appointment is 6 weeks. The person said, look, I'm cool with the 5,000, but I can't wait that long. And that was the end of the call. Patient Prism picked that up. The office manager intelligently called that patient back and said, really sorry about that. When do you want to come in? He said, as soon as possible. He said, tomorrow morning. Patient said yes. And, they might have bumped someone who was getting $125 cleaning and brought in a patient that was, $5,000 collections procedure. So, AI is available. It's available and technology available to allow patients to book and change appointments on their phone or on a computer. If someone doesn't show up, they'll get a text now if you're using the right technology. Hey, sorry, you missed your appointment. Click this link and you can reschedule and look into the office's calendar and reschedule. So there's a lot of different avenues where technology is really important and can reduce costs, can increase patient acceptance and fill the schedule up, which is what really is necessary to keep offices profitable.
Absolutely. No, there's a lot of opportunity for both automation of routine tasks, and both the Pearl example, the Patient Prism example are very good ones. I have to give a shout out to Ophir for naming that second opinion, which was a brilliant marketing phrase for what the system does and what the software provides to a clinician. Let's talk a little bit about the Dental Pitch Brokerage. So you founded this. Tell me what the purpose is. What is the business for? Who is your ideal client? And kind of walk me through what that looks like.
My co-founder and business partner is a gentleman named Elijah Desmond. He's pretty
DJ Smiles.
That's him.
That's right.
Yeah, he's very well known in the dental space. When I bought Children and Teen Dental, we renamed it to Oak. We had 20 practices, and now we're at about 65. So I've gone through the process of 45 acquisitions in a little over 3 years. The super majority of those came through brokers, and I'm just sharing my own personal experience, but I hear it a lot in the industry. At the end of every single one of those, there wasn't one time where I said that was a pleasant experience. And
what would make them unpleasant?
I'm going to tell you that. And that's a great question. So I'm going to use real estate as an example because a lot of people have purchased or sold a home. Mm-hmm. And when you're purchasing or selling a home, as an example, there's a real estate agent, a buyer's agent, a seller's agent. And generally, if you're a buyer and you want to sit down with the seller and have a face-to-face discussion to work out a couple fine points, the real estate agents do everything possible to not let you sit face-to-face with the seller of the home or speak to the seller of the home. I'm not really sure the mindset behind that, but I feel like the agents in real estate, it must be some mindset of protecting their commission. And in real estate, gosh, we've done over $1 billion in real estate transactions. And there were some really great deals that fell through because the attorneys got involved and started fighting with each other over the dumbest stuff, just trying to show that, how smart they are and earn their fees. and deals fell apart because we were not able to sit down with the buyer or the seller over things that we could have worked out over dinner or a face-to-face meeting. So I experienced a lot of that in real estate where the brokers and the lawyers keep the sellers and the buyers completely separated until the time of closing. And a lot of deals that should happen have fall apart because of that,
Right.
over things that could have been worked out. And I noticed the same thing as in dentistry. The brokers generally, not all, but generally really try to isolate the sellers from the buyers and put a wall up between the two until a letter of intent is accepted. And, we had a lot of deals fall apart because of that. Just were not allowed to speak to the seller. There were instances where we could have worked things out and the deal didn't happen. And it's frustrating because the seller has all the information.
Yep.
You want to make sure there's a good cultural fit between the buyer and the seller. And the brokers that we've worked with did everything possible to not let that interaction occur. And I hear this from a lot of the CEOs of DSOs that I know. The super majority of them say to me, the buying experience is very unpleasant. And I will say what I said, the brokerage community in general really likes to put a wall up.
Gaining control of the entire transaction, right? Like that wall helps in some ways to prevent things occurring outside of their control. I would imagine that's like the motivation behind it. I don't know if there's more to it than that. I totally understand your perspective.
I really don't know what the motivation is. I don't. I'm a rising tide lifts all boats kind of person. So Elijah and I said, there's got to be a better way to do this. So Dental Pitch Brokerage has a mindset of, let's take the walls down between the buyers and the sellers. We, Dental Pitch Brokerage, host live in-person events at dental conferences. We've had 2 so far. We have a third one coming up in Key West, September 11th. We bring active buyers in. I mean, some of the biggest ones in the country. Heartland has been to every one of our events. So we try to have 10 buyers there. We limit it to 10 buyers. And then we allow the sellers to come in. It's a private room. It's not televised. I interview the sellers on a stage, ask some questions. No financial questions because we already have their financial information. The buyers already have that tear sheet. So the questions are more about, tell us about your practice, the culture, what got you into dentistry? What does an ideal exit look like for you? Is price the most important thing? Do you want to stay on or do you just want to exit the business and retire? What kind of partner do you want? Are you wanting to grow your business, still wanting to open additional locations? And we have a really great discussion. The buyers get to see the personality of the selling dentist and understand the culture and the mindset. And then we open the floor up and the buyers have 20 minutes to ask the sellers any questions they want that are not financial. And then at the end of that event, the buyers let us know, hey, we'd like to speak to seller 1, 4, 5, and 6. And then we reserve the rest of the afternoon. The buyers have 15 or 20 minutes to sit down privately with all the sellers that come and talk about whatever they want and see if it's a good fit. And the sellers can say, hey, I like that buyer and that buyer and that buyer. I'm not interested in selling to buyer number 4 or 5. And the buyers come back and say, we really like seller 1, 3, and 6. We want to continue discussions. And if things go well, hopefully purchase that selling dentist. So we take the walls down. It's really worked out really beautifully. We have over 60 buyers that are currently buying in our buyer network. And our attitude is right from the beginning, you want to do a Zoom call with the selling dentist or the selling group, let's get on the phone, ask them anything you want, see if it's a good fit. And our goal is when a transaction is finalized, I personally be very disappointed if the buyer and the seller don't say, that was a really pleasant experience. Aside from the financial negotiations, which we help with, aside from that part, which is always never fun, the other 90% of it was great. It was enjoyable. Everyone's happy with the outcome. And they can look back and say, you know what? I loved working with Dental Pitch Brokerage. Those guys are they're nice, they're open, they're honest, they're transparent. And I enjoyed being able to work directly with the buyers and vice versa, the buyers with the sellers throughout the process to make sure that the final sale and purchase was a smooth and enjoyable process.
That's really neat, actually. What a unique format and approach to brokering those types of deals. And so as you said, you've done, I think, 3 events currently. Your third one is coming up. Did I hear that correctly? Of the in-person?
Yes.
So this just founded and launched this year in 2024? Or was this last year in 2023?
Yeah, we just launched in 2024. We had a live event at Florida Dental Association. We had a live event at Dykema. And then we have one in Key West as part of one of Elijah's events. We don't just limit the seller's information to the buyers that come to the event. the sellers get their deck and tear sheet out to all the buyers that we have in our network. We have a very, very large reach in that area. Want everybody to enjoy the process. There's no reason at all where a buyer and a seller cannot enjoy the process and have it be a positive experience.
I really like that outlook on it. Let me ask you this, and maybe I'm missing something, or this is just a ridiculous question, but we were talking at the beginning of the conversation about the arbitrage and the increased value and multiples that you can get on the EBITDA when you have multiple practices. Would that discourage a buyer from desiring to buy another group that is already built on 4, 5, 10, or 12 locations versus buying independent practices at that moment in time? And kind of what am I missing from that equation as it relates to acquisitions?
The higher the EBITDA, the higher the multiple on the EBITDA. I'm making some numbers up right now, but if a practice has $1 million of EBITDA, they might get 5 times EBITDA. If a practice has $3 million of EBITDA, they might get 6 times EBITDA. 5 million of EBITDA, 7 times EBITDA. 10 million of EBITDA, 10 times EBITDA. 15 million of EBITDA, 12 times EBITDA. So the higher the EBITDA, the higher the multiple. So if you already have a DSO or a group that has a market value of 12 times EBITDA, and that group is thinking of selling in a year or two, that group might be willing to pay 8 times EBITDA for a group. So I'm just saying they bought the group for 100 million. As soon as it's integrated in, that group's now worth $150 million because the difference between 8 times EBITDA and 12 times in that example is $50 million. So what generally happens is larger groups with larger EBITDA will buy smaller groups with smaller EBITDA because there's still some EBITDA multiple arbitrage available. The other reason is, let's say you're a big DSO and you can sell at 10 times EBITDA and you want to add 5 million of EBITDA in 2024. You can go out and buy 20 practices that have $250 million of EBITDA, pay 5 times EBITDA. You have to go through 20 transactions. That is a really challenging process. Or you can go out and find a group with 5 million of EBITDA and pay 7 times EBITDA. You're paying more, but it's one transaction. It's one transaction and one integration.
So the administrative and the legal burden is significantly decreased at that point to go through the single transaction versus 20 individual transactions to get to the same outcome. It's worth paying the premium at that point to accelerate where you want to get to.
Exactly. And it's worth paying the premium as long as there's still arbitrage there. If you're paying 8 times EBITDA for a group, as soon as they're assimilated in, they're worth 12 times EBITDA. You've increased the value of what you bought instantaneously by 50%. And sometimes those numbers are large, right? If you pay $100 million for a group at 8 times EBITDA, and as soon as it's assimilated into your DSO, which is worth 12 times EBITDA, you just made $50 million. And yeah, you did pay more than if you had cobbled together 50 individual offices, but the amount of administration time, human resource time, and legal cost is so burdensome to do that, it's almost impossible.
How does growth factor in to your multiples? When you're looking at a practice, and we see across our landscape kind of year over year, same store growth, there's many practices that are more challenged this year than they may have been in the past. I think a lot of individual practices will shoot for somewhere between 6 to 10% year over year growth if they can make it. And with rising costs and a lot of the other pressures that we've already discussed in this conversation, many are falling very short of that or are actually on the negative side of growth at this point compared to the year previously. So as you assign a valuation and determine what path you want to take to make an acquisition, how much of that should be factored into the multiple that you assign to the EBITDA that they are generating?
Generally, in the dental industry, over the last 12 months, most DSOs, super majority of them are completely flat on organic growth, meaning no growth at all. If you're getting 5% organic growth over the last 12 months, you're doing really, really well. 7 or 8% organic growth is exceptional. And there are a lot of DSOs that have negative EBITDA growth because of the reasons we discussed. Obviously, if you are a group or a practice and you've shown sustained organic EBITDA growth over the last year or 2 or 3, you're going to get a slightly higher multiple from a buyer.
It does affect it positively then.
It affects it positively. If you're flat, I wouldn't say it affects it in a negative way. I think right now flat is the baseline. And if you're a dental group or practice and you do have positive organic EBITDA growth, you probably are going to get a slightly higher multiple from a buyer.
Got it. Last question before we wrap. First off, is that a copper mug that you're drinking out of?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So I saw the post on LinkedIn. I think that was a copper pitcher that you had, but this is proof positive that you practice what you preach. I don't even think you're at home right now. You're traveling. You're still using a copper mug. So what are some of your other, if you think about your day to day or week to week, things that are important to you to kind of maintain balance, separate and apart from everything that you do business-wise? You and I were kind of geeking out a little bit before Dykema about cold plunges, meditation, hot yoga, and all of that. But just share a little bit of kind of your viewpoint on how you continue to lead a balanced life while managing all of these different businesses and being heavily involved in everything that you do.
I have a mindset that if you're not healthy emotionally, mentally, and physically, I don't care how successful you are, it's impossible to be happy. So I make a very committed effort for my mental, physical, and emotional health. Some of the things that I do, I get 8 hours of sleep every night. There are exceptions to that if I'm traveling, but generally 8 hours of sleep. I have a water filtration system at my house and a reverse osmosis water system at the sink. I make all my ice cubes with that. I put that water in the copper vase, and that also kills all bacteria and viruses. I eat 100% organic food. I cook probably 90% of my meals. I love the infrared sauna. It's great for detox. If you do that, you should take activated charcoal. It's just a little pill, and that pulls out all the toxins and heavy metals so you can sweat them out. I love the cold plunge. It's fantastic as well. I try to do that like once a week. If I can't do that, I'll do an infrared sauna and a cold shower. I work out 5 days a week. So I either go to the gym and do interval training nonstop for 30 minutes, or I do hot yoga, which is wonderful. That's my favorite thing to do for health. And then after I do yoga or go to the gym, I always do what's called a Wim Hof deep breathing. That's the guy's name, Wim, W-I-M.
The Iceman.
Yeah, the Iceman. That's a fantastic reset. But if you put junk and poison in your body, you're not going to be healthy. So you need sleep, you need sunshine. I don't believe in stay out of the sun. Try to get 20 minutes of sun every day. Good sleep, good food. I don't surround myself or allow negative people in my life that just suck the life out of you energetically. So I think it's really important if you're in business to be committed to staying mentally, physically, and emotionally healthy.
I love it. Well, it seems to be working, Matt. I really appreciate the time that you spent today. And it's great to hear about all the things that you're working on. Excited to have you in dental. For those listening, how can they find Dental Pitch Brokerage?
We have a website. It's just called Dental Pitch, Pitch, brokerage.com. All of our contact information is on there. If someone wants to call me, my cell is 404-401-3505. You're welcome to text me or call me anytime, 7 days a week. I love talking to people. I love learning from people, and I love helping people. So reach out to Dental Pitch if you want to chat with me.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining today.
Thanks, Mike. It was a pleasure.
The Dental Economist Show is brought to you by Planet DDS. To find out more about how cloud-based dental software by Planet DDS helps unleash dentists and their staff to focus on patient care, visit www.planetdds.com. Stay tuned for upcoming episodes by following wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for listening.